just after midnight, a little past 12, and the sound alone made my stomach tighten. When I answered, my grandson's voice came through the line, thin and shaking, like he was barely holding himself together. "Grandpa, please come get me," he whispered. "My stepmom hit me, and my dad says I am lying." In that instant, everything I thought I understood about my family cracked wide open. I was 72 years old, a man who had built a construction company from nothing with his own hands, a man who had raised his son by himself and believed he knew what loyalty and responsibility looked like. But that night, as I threw on my jacket and rushed out into the cold, empty streets of Phoenix to help an 11-year-old boy, I learned how a father can turn into a stranger and how a woman married into the family can become something far more dangerous. If you have ever asked yourself how far you would go to protect a child when even your own blood turns against you, you will want to hear how this plays out. Stay with me, because what I discovered that night could help save a child in your own neighborhood. And leave a comment about which state you live in, because child protection laws change dramatically depending on where you are. By the time I pulled into the parking lot of the South Ridge Police Substation on East Willow Avenue, I honestly believed the worst part was behind us. I could not have been more wrong. My grandson's call had come while I was sitting in my home office reviewing monthly financial statements. 11 years old, and already his voice carried a kind of fear no child should ever know. "Grandpa, she hit me," he had said. "Dad does not believe me. Please, I need you to come to the police station." "I am on my way," I told him immediately. "Stay exactly where you are and do not leave." There was a pause, and then he said something that stayed with me the entire drive. "Thank you for believing me, Grandpa." That sentence echoed in my head during the 20-minute drive across town. No child should ever feel grateful just because an adult believes them. But he had already learned that telling the truth does not guarantee support, especially when adults want to avoid discomfort and money complicates loyalties. I called my son Mark while driving. He answered on the second ring. "Dad, do not come," he said quickly. "Ethan is just upset about some discipline. Lauren was helping him with homework, and he overreacted. You know how dramatic he can be." "My grandson has never lied to me," I said. "Can you say the same?" The silence on the other end of the line told me more than any words ever could. The police station sat under harsh fluorescent lights, all concrete walls and cold institutional air. Inside, Ethan was curled up on a bench beside a female officer with kind eyes and a calm voice. The moment he saw me, he jumped up and ran straight into my arms. I had not seen him move that fast since the previous Thanksgiving. "Grandpa, you really came," he said, pressing his face into my coat. The officer stepped closer, holding a clipboard. Her name badge read, "Officer Martinez." "Mr. Callahan, I am glad you arrived," she said. "Your grandson asked for you instead of his parents." "His father thinks he is lying," I replied. She nodded once and held up her phone. "About this?" The photos on her screen made my chest tighten. A clear handprint stood out on Ethan's left cheek. His bottom lip was split and swollen. 3 distinct bruises marked his upper arm in the unmistakable shape of fingers. Years in construction had trained my eye to read damage patterns. This was not discipline. This was violence. "Where is Lauren right now?" I asked. "At home with your son," she said. "They are discussing the situation." I crouched down so I was eye level with my grandson. "I need you to tell me exactly what happened," I said gently. She got mad about my math homework, Ethan explained. She said I was stupid, like my dad used to be. When I told her that was mean, she grabbed my arm and slapped me. When Dad came home, I tried to tell him, but she said I was lying for attention. And your father believed her? I asked. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. He was clearly trying to hold back. He told me to stop making up stories to get people in trouble. Officer Martinez handed me a card. Child Protective Services will interview Ethan tomorrow, she said. The caseworker is Denise Harper. File number AZ-25-4179. Ethan tightened his grip on my hand. Grandpa, can I stay with you tonight? Please. Looking at his bruised face, I made the first choice that would eventually change all of our lives. Yes, I said. And Ethan, if anything like this ever happens again, you call me right away. What I did not realize then was that Lauren had already started planning her next move. The drive to my house on Cedar Lane took about 15 minutes. Ethan sat quietly in the passenger seat, occasionally touching his swollen lip. I had installed a booster seat years earlier for his visits, but that night it felt different. It was not about convenience anymore. It was about protection. Grandpa, he asked softly, am I in trouble? No, I told him. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. Then why does my dad think I am bad? There is no easy way to explain to an 11-year-old that adults sometimes choose comfort over truth, or that his own father had become someone I barely recognized. My phone vibrated. Mark again. Dad, you cannot just take Ethan without talking to us, he said. Us? I repeated. Lauren and me. We are his family. Your son has a split lip and finger-shaped bruises on his arm, I said evenly. Kids bruise easily, he snapped. Lauren is a certified nursing assistant. She knows how to handle children. Ethan has been acting out ever since you started spoiling him with those expensive gifts. Expensive gifts. The previous month, I had bought my grandson a basic smartphone so he could call for help in an emergency. Apparently, giving a child a lifeline now counted as spoiling. Bring him back home tonight, Mark demanded. No, I said. No? His voice jumped an octave. You do not get to make decisions like that about my son. Watch me, I replied, and I ended the call. Ethan had been listening the entire time. When I ended the call, he looked up at me, his eyes wide and uncertain. Is my dad mad at me? He asked quietly. Your father is confused right now, I said, choosing my words carefully. But you are safe here, and that is the only thing that matters tonight. Once we were inside, I made him a mug of hot chocolate and sat him at my kitchen table. It was the same table where, more than 30 years earlier, I had helped my son solve math problems and practice spelling words. I stared at the worn wood grain and wondered how the boy I raised had drifted so far from the man standing on my porch earlier. Ethan, I said after a moment, I need to ask you something important. Has Lauren ever hurt you before? He stared down into his mug, watching the steam rise. Sometimes, he admitted. She pinches me when Dad is not looking, or she grabs my arm really hard and tells me I better not cause problems. But tonight was different. Different in what way? I asked. She looked happy when she hit me, he said softly, like she wanted to do it. A cold chill ran straight through me. I had seen that expression before in business dealings, in people who enjoyed having control over someone weaker. It was never accidental, and it was never harmless. At exactly 10:45 that night, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Mark and Lauren standing on my porch. She positioned herself slightly behind him, her face arranged into a look of polite concern that I no longer trusted. I opened the door but made no move to invite them inside. "Dad, this is getting ridiculous," Mark said immediately. "Ethan needs to come home." Lauren stepped forward. "Mr. Callahan, I understand that emotions are high," she said calmly. "Children sometimes misunderstand adult discipline, especially when they are not used to consistent structure." "Structure?" I repeated. "Yes," she replied smoothly. "Ethan has been struggling with behavior issues, acting out at school, lying about finishing assignments. I was trying to help him understand consequences." She spoke like a trained professional, measured and reasonable, using all the correct language. If I had not already seen the injuries on my grandson's face, I might have believed every word. "And the bruises?" I asked. "Children bruise very easily," she said, "especially active boys. He fell off his bike yesterday." "That is interesting," I said, "because he described them as handprint bruises." For a split second, her expression faltered. "Children have vivid imaginations," she replied quickly. Mark nodded beside her, eager to agree. "That is exactly what I told you, Dad. Ethan watches too many crime shows with you." "Mark," I said quietly, "look at your son's face." I did. "And?" "Kids get hurt," he said with a shrug. "That is normal." Standing there, I finally accepted what I had been resisting all night. My son was no longer the person I had raised. The young man I knew would never have dismissed his child's pain so easily. Lauren had not just entered his life, she had replaced his judgment with her own. "Ethan is staying here tonight," I said firmly. "Dad," Mark began. "This discussion is over," I cut in. As I closed the door, I heard Lauren whisper something to him. His shoulders slumped like a man who had lost a battle, though I could not tell whether he was defeated by the situation or by her. Ethan appeared beside me in the hallway. "Grandpa, thank you," he said. "For what?" I asked. "For not making me go back tonight." The relief in his voice told me more than words ever could. He was not just afraid of Lauren. He was terrified of being alone with her. I tucked him into the guest bedroom, the same room Mark had used during college visits home. Ethan looked impossibly small against the oversized pillows. "Grandpa," he asked, "what if Dad makes me go back?" "We will figure it out," I said. "And what if Lauren says I am lying again?" I sat down on the edge of the bed. "Ethan, adults sometimes believe what is convenient instead of what is true. But I promise you this, if you ever tell me someone hurt you, I will believe you." For the first time that night, he smiled. "I know," he said. "That is why I called you instead of calling the police." After he fell asleep, I sat alone in my living room, replaying everything in my mind. The bruises, Lauren's rehearsed explanations, my son's refusal to see what was in front of him. The pieces were there, but I still could not see the full picture. My phone buzzed with a message from Mark. "Dad, you're making a mistake. Lauren is trying to help Ethan become a better kid. You're undermining our parenting." Our parenting? When had my son started speaking in plural about decisions that directly affected his child? I poured myself a small glass of bourbon and considered what came next. I would contact Child Protective Services in the morning without question. But something about this situation felt larger than a single incident. This felt organized, deliberate. Lauren had not just harmed my grandson. She had turned my own son into her shield. The next morning, a caseworker from Child Protective Services arrived at 9:30 sharp. Her name was Denise Harper, a thin woman with tired eyes who looked like she had witnessed far too much in her career. "Mr. Callahan," she asked, "I am here regarding Ethan. Where are his parents?" "At work, as far as I know," I said. "And they were not notified about this interview?" "His father believes Ethan is lying about the abuse," I replied. She glanced down at her paperwork. "That is troubling. May I speak with Ethan alone?" I called him downstairs. He looked more rested than I expected, likely the first peaceful sleep he had enjoyed in months. "Ethan," I said, "this is Ms. Harper. She just wants to make sure you are safe." The interview lasted 40 minutes. From my office behind a closed door, I heard my grandson calmly describing what had happened the day before, then explaining earlier incidents. He was precise, careful about dates and times. Someone had taught him to notice details. When Ms. Harper finally came out, her expression was serious. "Mr. Callahan, Ethan's account is consistent and supported by physical evidence," she said. "However, I need to interview both parents before making any custody recommendations." "And until then?" I asked. Ms. Harper folded her hands and spoke carefully. "Ethan can remain with you for now, but understand this is not standard procedure. In most cases, children are placed in temporary foster care during an active investigation." "He is not going into foster care," I said flatly. "That is not a decision you get to make on your own," she replied. "Watch me make it," I said without raising my voice. She studied me for a long moment. "You are his grandfather, which gives you limited legal standing. However, if his parents formally demand his return, and I cannot establish immediate risk—" "What qualifies as immediate risk?" I interrupted. "Documented patterns of abuse," she explained, "proof of escalating violence, medical records showing ongoing physical or chemical harm." "Medical records," I repeated. "Ms. Harper, has Ethan seen a doctor recently?" She glanced down at her tablet. "Not according to school health files." "Why do you ask?" "No reason yet," I said. "Just thinking." After she left, I wasted no time. I called Ethan's pediatrician, Dr. Patricia Hayes. I had been listed as an emergency contact since the day he was born. "Tom, it is good to hear from you," she said warmly. "How is Ethan doing?" "That is exactly why I am calling," I replied. "Has he been in your office recently?" There was a pause. "That is interesting you would ask. Lauren brought him in 3 times over the last 2 months. She reported behavioral issues, trouble sleeping, and periods of hyperactivity." "Periods?" I asked slowly. "She requested medication evaluations," Dr. Hayes continued. "Specifically, she pushed for attention deficit medication or mild sedatives to help him focus and sleep." The room seemed to go cold around me. "Did you prescribe anything?" I asked. "No," she said firmly. "I ordered tests first. His blood work showed consistent traces of diphenhydramine, the active ingredient in Benadryl, at levels suggesting regular use. When I questioned Lauren, she told me you had been giving him allergy medication for seasonal symptoms." "I have never given Ethan any medication," I said. There was silence on the line. "Tom," Dr. Hayes said quietly, "that is extremely concerning. In a child his size, repeated dosing could cause drowsiness, confusion, and impaired concentration. It can easily mimic attention disorders. To teachers, counselors, or social workers, it could make him appear unstable." "Could it be considered dangerous?" I asked. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Administering it regularly without medical supervision is a form of poisoning." I thanked her and ended the call, my hands shaking. Crystal had not just been hitting my grandson. She had been drugging him slowly, deliberately, and then using the effects as evidence that something was wrong with him. I immediately called my attorney. Grace Coleman had handled my business and personal legal matters for more than 15 years. She answered on the second ring. "Tom, what is happening? You never call on weekends," she said. "Grace, I need you to freeze every bank account I have," I told her, "business and personal, immediately." There was a stunned pause. "What? Why?" "Because I believe someone has been stealing from me and I need to protect my grandson." "Ethan? Mark's son?" she asked. "Tom, slow down. Tell me what is going on." I laid everything out. The abuse, the unexplained medication, Lauren's carefully constructed narrative portraying Ethan as unstable. Grace listened without interrupting. "This goes far beyond child abuse," she said when I finished. "If someone is drugging a child to manufacture behavioral evidence while siphoning money, that is conspiracy." "Can you freeze the accounts today?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "I will file emergency motions within the hour. But Tom, if Mark is involved in any financial misconduct, this will permanently damage your relationship with him." I exhaled slowly. "That relationship is already gone. Lauren destroyed it." "Are you certain Mark is a victim here?" she asked carefully. "Or could he be complicit?" I had been avoiding that thought, but she was right to ask. The son I raised would never allow this. The man who dismissed bruises on his child's face was not the son I recognized. "Freeze everything," I said. "We will deal with the fallout later." After I hung up, Ethan wandered into my office. "Grandpa," he said softly, "Ms. Harper said I might have to go back home soon." "Not if I have anything to say about it," I replied. "What if Lauren says I'm lying again?" he asked. "What if my dad believes her?" I knelt in front of him. "Ethan, do you trust me?" "Yes, sir," he said without hesitation. "Then trust me when I say this," I told him. "What she did to you will never happen again." Even as I said the words, I knew Lauren would not stop quietly. Whatever her plan was, it was already in motion. The following Monday morning, the phone rang again. "Tom?" My accountant, Russell Clark, sounded unsettled. "I am reviewing the quarterly statements, and I need to ask you about several withdrawals from the Callahan Construction operating account." "What withdrawals?" I asked. "There were 3 cash advances," he said, $15,000 each, September 12th, October 8th, and November 15th, all authorized using your personal approval code. My approval code, only 3 people knew it, me, Russell, and Mark, who occasionally handled payroll for job sites. "Russell," I said carefully, "I did not authorize any of those withdrawals." There was a pause. "Tom, the documents carry your signature." "Send them to me immediately," I said. The scanned files hit my email minutes later. My signature was flawless. Too flawless. Someone had practiced it. I called Mark right away. "Dad, I am in the middle of work," he said impatiently. "Can this wait?" $45,000 has been taken out of my company account without my consent," I said. Silence. "Mark," I continued, "did you hear what I just said?" He swallowed audibly. "Dad, Listen, I can explain." "Explain what?" I said slowly. "That you have been stealing from me?" "It is not stealing," Mark said defensively. "It is my inheritance anyway. I was just accessing it early." "My inheritance," I repeated, stunned. "Mark, you took money from a company that supports 12 families. I had no choice, he said. I had debts. Lauren has been helping me manage my finances, and she said, Lauren told you to take money from me? I interrupted. She said you would never notice, he replied. She said we deserved financial security after everything we have done for Ethan. Everything they had done for Ethan, drugging him, hitting him, destroying his sense of safety. What debts? I asked. There was another long pause. Dad, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper, I have a gambling problem. When did that start? I asked. After Lauren and I got married, he said. She introduced me to online poker sites. She said it was easy money. At first, I thought I could win it back. Then I kept losing. I borrowed money to cover losses, then borrowed more to pay that back, and it just kept getting worse. How much? I asked. $280,000. I sat down heavily in my chair. My son owed more than many people earned in several years. Who do you owe it to? I asked. Some men Lauren knew from her old job, he said. They are not patient people. They told me I have until December 1st. Or what? I asked quietly. Or they hurt Ethan to make their point. The room spun. Suddenly, every piece of the puzzle snapped into place. Lauren had not just lured my son into gambling. She had tied him to violent people who used children as leverage. She had dismantled his judgment, drained his finances, poisoned his relationship with his son, and erased his moral compass. Mark, I said carefully, who is the beneficiary on your life insurance policy? Lauren, he answered automatically. She is my wife. And Ethan's? I asked. He does not have one. Wait, he said slowly. Lauren set up a policy through her work. She said it was for college, in case something happened to us. How much is the policy? I asked. I think around $800,000, he said. Lauren handles all the insurance paperwork. $800,000, enough to erase his debt and leave her well-funded. Mark, I continued, has Lauren ever suggested that I am too old to manage my affairs? He hesitated. She has mentioned that you seem confused sometimes, that you forget things, that you make poor financial decisions. What poor decisions? I asked. Buying things for Ethan, not understanding he needs discipline, interfering in our family choices. Do you believe that about me? I asked. I do not know what to believe anymore, he admitted. Lauren says I... Stop, I said sharply. Do not tell me what Lauren says. Tell me what you think. There was a long breath on the line. I think I am scared. I think I have ruined everything. And I think those people will hurt my son if I cannot pay them, and I have no idea how to get that kind of money. I closed my eyes. Mark, I am going to ask you one final question. Think before you answer. Has Lauren ever suggested a solution to your debt problem that involves something happening to me? The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Dad, he finally said. Has she? I pressed. She mentioned that if you had a medical emergency, he said slowly, if you needed long-term care, I could access your accounts to manage things. She said some of that money might help with my debts. A medical emergency, I repeated. She said at your age, accidents happen, he continued, especially to people who live alone and forget their medications. My chest tightened. My blood pressure medication, I said quietly. Lauren would know exactly what an overdose looks like, how to make it seem accidental. Dad, listen to me very carefully, I said. Do not go home tonight. Do not tell Lauren about this conversation. Take Ethan and meet me at Grace Coleman's office at 4 o'clock this afternoon. I cannot just Your wife is planning to kill me, I said bluntly, and she is using your son as leverage to force your cooperation. You can keep being her victim, or you can help me protect your child and yourself. You do not understand, he said, panic creeping back into his voice. The people she brought into this, they are dangerous. If you do not pay, Ethan is in danger anyway, I said. But if you help me stop Lauren, we can protect him and get you real help. Dad, he whispered, I am scared. For the first time in months, he sounded like my son again. I know, I said, but we are going to fix this. At that moment, Mark stopped being just a victim of manipulation. He was finally choosing a side. Grace Coleman's law office occupied the third floor of a downtown high-rise. I had been there countless times for contracts and estate planning, but never for something this personal. Mark arrived first, exhausted and unshaven. Ethan was with him, confused but smiling when he saw me. Grandpa, he said, Dad told me we are having a family meeting. Something like that, I replied. Grace led us into a conference room where legal pads, files, and recording equipment were already laid out on the table. Tom, she began, closing the door behind us. Grace adjusted her glasses and looked directly at me. I have reviewed the bank records you sent over. The signatures are advanced forgeries, but they are still forgeries. I filed emergency motions earlier today, and all accounts have been frozen. Order number 445123 went into effect at exactly 2 o'clock this afternoon. Mark stiffened in his chair. Dad, you froze the accounts? Including the one Lauren has been quietly draining, Grace said calmly. But the financial theft is not our biggest concern anymore. I ran extensive background checks this morning. Lauren's employment history raised serious red flags. She opened a thick folder and slid it across the table. Lauren Marie Santos, she continued. That was her legal name before marrying you. She worked as a Child Protective Services investigator in Austin for 3 years. Her employment ended after she was terminated for falsifying reports. Mark's voice barely worked. Falsifying reports, how? She documented abuse cases that never happened, Grace explained. In other situations, she exaggerated minor incidents to justify removing children from their homes. Afterward, she recommended specific foster families. Those families were paying her kickbacks. Mark's face drained of color. She never told me any of that. It gets worse, Grace said evenly. After she was terminated, she relocated to Houston and began working as a private caregiver for elderly clients. 2 of those clients died under suspicious circumstances. No criminal charges were filed, but both deaths resulted in large insurance payouts to family members who had hired Lauren based on her recommendations. Ethan looked up from the coloring book in his lap. Grandpa, what is happening? He asked. This is grown-up business, buddy, I said gently. You keep coloring? Grace lowered her voice. Tom, I believe Lauren deliberately targeted your family. Mark's gambling addiction gave her the perfect entry point. She could push him into debt, present herself as the solution, and then slowly isolate you from your grandson. But why hurt Ethan? I asked. To build a record, Grace replied. If Ethan appears unstable, aggressive, or emotionally troubled, Lauren can argue that your influence is harmful. At the same time, she documents Mark's addiction and financial instability, positioning herself as the only responsible adult. The pieces were clicking together with terrifying precision. "What about the life insurance policies?" I asked. "I am still verifying those," Grace said. "But based on her pattern, once Ethan is fully removed from your influence, Lauren would likely arrange an accident for you. Mark would be too grief-stricken and burdened with guilt to question the circumstances." Mark finally spoke. "She told me you were becoming forgetful," he said quietly, "that you needed medical supervision." "What kind of supervision?" Grace asked. "She suggested full-time care," he said. "Maybe a residential facility where professionals could monitor his health." "Did she offer to help choose the facility?" Grace pressed. "Yes," Mark admitted. "She said she knew places that specialized in elderly care, places where Dad would be safe and comfortable." "Safe," Grace repeated, "where she could control his medications, his visitors, and his daily routine." She flipped to another page. "There is more. I obtained Lauren's financial activity. For the past 18 months, she has been transferring money into offshore accounts. She is planning to disappear once insurance payouts are triggered." Ethan looked up again. "Who is Lauren?" he asked. Mark and I exchanged a long glance. There is no easy way to explain to a child that the person supposed to care for him is a predator. "Ethan," I said carefully, "Lauren is someone who pretended to care about our family." He nodded. "I know. She is mean to me when Dad is not watching." Mark's face collapsed. "Why did you not tell me?" he asked, his voice breaking. "I tried," Ethan said softly. "You said I was making things up." Mark covered his face. "I am so sorry. I am so sorry." Grace cleared her throat. "We need to discuss immediate protective steps. Ethan cannot return to that house under any circumstances." "What about Mark?" I asked. "Mark needs to maintain his normal routine so Lauren does not become suspicious," Grace said. "But he cannot be alone with her, especially overnight." "I can stay at a hotel," Mark offered. "I can say I am working late." "No," Grace said firmly. "That would raise alarms. You need to go home and act normal. But you must not eat or drink anything she prepares. And you will wear this." She handed him a small object that looked like a shirt button. "What is it?" Mark asked. "A recording device," she said. "Texas law allows one-party consent recordings. If Lauren admits to anything, we will have evidence." "She is smart," Mark said. "She will not confess." "People who believe they are winning often get careless," Grace replied. I reached across the table and took my son's hand. "Son, I know this is terrifying," I said. "Lauren has been playing a long, calculated game. We are going to end it." "What if she figures out what we are doing?" he asked. "Then we adapt," I said. "But she is already planning to hurt Ethan and me. We cannot wait for her to strike first." Ethan closed his coloring book and looked at me. "Grandpa, are we in danger?" I knelt beside his chair. "Sometimes adults make terrible choices that hurt the people they should protect," I said. "But your dad and I are going to keep you safe." "Is that why I cannot go home?" he asked. "Yes," I said. He nodded once. "Good. I do not like it there anymore." The calm, flat way Ethan said it shattered me. No child should ever feel safer anywhere else than in their own home. Hearing that told me everything I needed to know. Grace handed Mark a business card. "If Lauren becomes suspicious, if she starts asking strange questions, or if anything at all feels off, you call me immediately," she said. "I do not care if it is 3 a.m. Mark slipped the card into his pocket. "Grace, what happens if we cannot prove what she is doing?" Grace did not hesitate. Then Ethan goes into foster care while the investigation continues, and Lauren will attempt to access your father's assets through whatever legal strategy she has prepared. And if we can prove it? Mark asked. Criminal charges, Grace said. Fraud, child endangerment, conspiracy, and possibly attempted murder. Ethan stays with Tom, and you begin treatment for your gambling addiction. Mark looked at his son, then at me. His eyes were red. Dad, I have been such an idiot. You were manipulated by someone who does this for a living, I said firmly. That is not the same thing. Is it? He asked quietly. Yes, I said, because now you are choosing to fight back. Mark bent down and hugged Ethan, awkward and uncertain, like a man relearning how to be a father. I promise I will never let anyone hurt you again, he said. Okay, Dad, Ethan replied simply. As we gathered our things, Grace pulled me aside. Tom, based on Lauren's past behavior, she escalates quickly once she feels threatened, she warned. The account freeze will absolutely put her on edge. Be extremely careful over the next 24 hours. I nodded, though my mind was already racing. Lauren's mask had not just cracked. It had fallen completely. I drove Ethan back to my house while Mark headed home to face his wife. The sun was setting behind the Dallas skyline, washing the buildings in deep gold and red. Under any other circumstances, it would have been beautiful. That night, it only made my chest feel heavier. Grandpa, Ethan asked from the passenger seat, is my dad going to be okay? Your father is stronger than he thinks, I said. What about you? I smiled slightly. I am tougher than I look. He grinned. I know. Dad used to tell me stories about how you built houses with nothing but a hammer and some nails. Those stories might be a little exaggerated, I said. Back at my place, I made Ethan dinner and kept my phone close. Mark was supposed to check in every 2 hours. The first call came at 7 o'clock. Dad, Mark said quietly, she knows. Knows what? I asked. About the account freeze. The bank called this afternoon and told her the joint account was frozen pending investigation. How did she react? I asked. Too calm, he said. She said it must be a mistake and that she would handle it tomorrow. But she has been watching me all evening, like she is waiting for something. Are you wearing the recording device? I asked. Yes, he said. But she has not said anything incriminating yet. Give her time, I replied. People like Lauren cannot resist bragging when they think they are winning. The second call came at 9:30. Dad, we need to talk, Mark said, his voice tense. Lauren just offered to make me a drink. Do not take it, I said immediately. I told her I was not thirsty, he continued. She insisted, said I seemed stressed, and that warm milk with honey would help me sleep. Warm milk with honey, perfect for masking medication. What did you do? I asked. I told her I was lactose intolerant, he said. She said she would make tea instead. Mark, I said sharply, you need to leave that house now. I cannot just walk out, he replied. She will know something is wrong. She already knows, I said. She is trying to drug you. Dad, the line went dead. I called back immediately, straight to voicemail. I called Grace. Grace, Mark's phone just went dead, I said. Lauren was trying to drug him. Where are they? She asked. At their house, 892 Maple Drive. I am calling the police, she said. No, I said quickly. If the police show up now, Lauren will destroy evidence and claim Mark had a breakdown and was calling me irrationally. We need the recording first. There was a pause. Tom, Grace said carefully. If Lauren believes Mark suspects her, she will accelerate her plan. That means she will get careless. I ended the call and turned toward Ethan. I had just made the hardest decision of my life. Ethan, I said, grabbing my keys, we are going for a drive. Where? He asked. To help your dad. We drove through quiet suburban streets toward Mark's house. Ethan sat beside me, calm and trusting, while I prepared myself to confront a woman I now believed was capable of murder. Grandpa, he asked softly, are we going to see Lauren? Yes, I said. I do not want to, he replied. You will not have to talk to her, I assured him. You stay in the car with the doors locked, okay? Okay, he said. The house was dark, except for the kitchen light. Lauren's car sat in the driveway, Mark's truck parked beside it. I pulled over across the street beneath a large oak tree. Ethan, I said, remember what I told you? Doors locked. If anything feels wrong, you call 911. What is going to go wrong? He asked. Hopefully nothing, I said. I walked up to the front door and rang the bell. Lauren answered almost immediately. She looked perfectly composed, dressed in a soft sweater, her face arranged into concerned calm. Tom, she said warmly, what a surprise. Is everything all right? I need to see my son, I said. He is sleeping, she replied. He had a terrible headache, so I gave him something to help him rest. You gave him something? I asked. What exactly did you give him? Just over-the-counter pain medication, she said smoothly. He has been under so much stress lately. Lauren, I said evenly, I need to see Mark. She tilted her head. You seem upset, Tom. Why do you not come inside and sit down for a moment? She stepped backward and gestured for me to come inside, as if welcoming me in, but I immediately noticed how she positioned her body. She placed herself squarely between me and the staircase, blocking the only path upstairs. Where exactly is Mark? I asked. He is upstairs in our bedroom, she said calmly. But Tom, I am actually very concerned about you. Concerned about me? I repeated. Yes, she continued smoothly. You have been making some very unusual choices lately. Taking Ethan without permission, interfering with our household routines. Our household routines? I said sharply. Mark and I have talked at length about your recent behavior, she went on. The memory lapses, the confusion around finances. We believe it may be time to look at additional support for you. What kind of support? I asked. Professional care, she replied without hesitation. There are excellent facilities designed for elderly individuals who need help making daily decisions. There it was. Standing in her living room, she was calmly laying out her plan to lock me away in a care facility. Lauren, I said evenly, I froze my bank accounts today. For just a split second, her composure cracked. Why would you do that? She asked. Because someone has been stealing from me. She sighed softly. Tom, that kind of paranoid thinking is exactly what worries Mark and me. Who would possibly steal from you? You tell me. She stepped closer. Tom, I think you should sit down. You are not thinking clearly. I am thinking more clearly than I have in months, I said. Are you? She asked coolly. Because, from my perspective, you look like a confused old man who has lost touch with reality. Tomorrow, when Mark wakes up, we are going to have a serious conversation about your care options. Tomorrow, Mark will wake up? I asked. Of course, she replied. Why would he not? Because you drugged him. Her expression hardened instantly, turning cold and calculating. Tom, you are experiencing paranoid delusions, she said. Mark took medication for a headache and went to bed early. That is completely normal. Then show me, I said. Show you what? Show me my son, I said. Prove he is just sleeping. I am not waking my husband to satisfy your fantasies, she snapped. Then I will wake him myself. I moved toward the stairs. She stepped directly in front of me. I cannot allow you to disturb Mark while he is unwell. Unwell? I repeated. He has been dealing with anxiety and depression, she said smoothly. The gambling debt, the stress from Ethan's behavioral issues. Sometimes he needs medication to cope. What medication? I asked. Prescription medication. From which doctor? She stiffened. Tom, you need to leave. You are clearly having an episode. An episode. She was constructing her story right in front of me, building documentation in her head. A confused elderly man breaking into their home, making accusations, appearing unstable. Lauren, I said quietly, I want you to listen very carefully. Tom, I know about your time in Austin, I continued. I know about the elderly clients in Houston. I know about the offshore accounts. Her face went completely blank. I have no idea what you're talking about, she said. I know about Ethan's blood work, I went on, the diphenhydramine levels, the behavioral documentation you have been creating. You need to leave now, she hissed, and I know about the life insurance policies. She reached into her purse. Tom, you are having a medical emergency, she said. I am calling for help. Whose help? I asked. She pulled out her phone, but she did not dial emergency services. Instead, she speed-dialed a different number. It is me, she said into the phone. We have a problem. Tom knows. She listened briefly, then ended the call. Tom, she said calmly, some friends of mine are coming over to help resolve this. Friends? I asked. The same people Mark owes money to. Lauren, I said, backing slowly toward the door, whatever you're planning will not work. She laughed softly. Planning? Tom, you broke into my home late at night shouting accusations. You are clearly having a mental breakdown. When authorities hear about this, they will see an elderly man in need of psychiatric evaluation. The police are not coming, I said. No, she replied, but people who understand delicate situations are on their way. People who know how to solve problems quietly. My heart pounded. Her associates would arrive within minutes, and I would not stand a chance against people willing to threaten a child over gambling debt. Lauren, I said, you have made one mistake. And what is that? She asked. You assumed I came here alone. Her confidence faltered. What do you mean? Look out the window, I said. She turned toward the front window. Ethan sat in my truck, his small face illuminated by the glow of his phone, pressed tightly to his ear. Her face drained of color. You brought Ethan here? What kind of grandfather puts his grandson in danger? The kind who taught his grandson to call 911 when adults start acting suspicious, I replied. You are bluffing, she said weakly. Am I? Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder by the second. Lauren spun toward the back of the house, but she had made her own mistake. Mark appeared at the top of the stairs, unsteady but awake, clutching his phone. Dad, he called. What is going on? Mark, are you all right? I asked. She gave me something, he said slowly. I feel strange. Mark, Lauren called out sweetly, come downstairs. Your father is confused and upset. But Mark was staring at his phone, his expression changing as he listened. Dad, Mark said hoarsely, holding up his phone. "This thing has been recording everything. I heard her talking about your breakdown. I heard her say her friends were coming over." Lauren froze in place. For one brief moment, I saw pure panic flicker across her face. She had completely forgotten about the recording device. Mark staggered down the remaining steps, gripping the banister. "Lauren," he said, struggling to keep his balance, "what friends? What problems were you talking about?" "Mark, your father is confused," she said quickly. "No," he shot back. "I heard you. You said people were coming to solve problems quietly." The sound of sirens grew louder outside. Lauren's eyes darted between Mark and me as she calculated her options. Then she turned and ran. The back door slammed just as multiple police cars pulled into the driveway. But Lauren had made one final fatal mistake. Every word she had spoken was preserved on Mark's recording device. Detective Lisa Murphy arrived around 2:30 in the morning with several officers and a paramedic. She was younger than I expected, maybe mid-40s, sharp-eyed and alert, the kind of person who missed nothing. "Mr. Callahan," she said, "your grandson called 911 reporting adults behaving suspiciously. Can you explain what happened here?" I handed her Grace Coleman's business card. "Detective, this situation is complex. My attorney has been documenting what we believe is a long-running fraud and conspiracy." She nodded once. "Where is the homeowner?" "My son is here," I said. "His wife fled when she realized law enforcement was on the way." "Fled?" she repeated. Mark stepped beside me, swaying slightly. The paramedic immediately moved in and began checking his eyes. "Sir," the paramedic asked, "did you take any medication tonight?" "My wife gave me something for a headache," Mark said slowly, "but I think there was something else in it." Detective Murphy looked between us. "All right," she said, "let's start from the beginning." Over the next hour, we showed her everything. The recording device captured Lauren's entire conversation, her comments about my mental state, her reference to friends arriving to handle things, her familiarity with my finances, and her attempt to frame me as unstable. "She mentioned friends," Detective Murphy said, pausing the playback. "What kind of friends?" "Dangerous ones," I replied. "Mark owes money to people Lauren introduced him to." "How much?" she asked. Mark swallowed. $280,000. "And when is it due?" she asked. "December 1st. Detective Murphy checked her watch. "That is less than 2 weeks away." The paramedic finished his assessment. "His pupils are dilated, and he is showing signs of sedation," he said. "We need blood work to determine what substance he ingested." "Lauren is a certified nursing assistant," I added. "She would know exactly what to administer and how to disguise it." Detective Murphy made several notes. "Where is your grandson now?" she asked. "In my truck," I said. "This was too much for him to witness." "How old is he?" 11. "And he was the one who called emergency services?" "Yes," I said. "I taught him to call if adults started acting dangerous." She nodded. That was the right call. She stepped outside to speak with Ethan while I stayed with Mark. "Dad," Mark said quietly, his voice breaking, "I cannot believe I let her do this. I let her manipulate me." "Addiction makes people vulnerable," I said. "Predators like Lauren look for exactly that." "I should have protected Ethan," he said. "I should have believed him." "You are believing him now," I replied. "That matters." Detective Murphy returned with Ethan a few minutes later. He looked exhausted, but he was alert and calm. "Ethan," she said gently. "Can you tell me what you heard while you were in the truck?" "She said mean things about Grandpa," he answered. "She called someone and told them Grandpa knew something. Then she said people were coming to fix problems." "Did you recognize the voice on the phone?" Detective Murphy asked. "No, ma'am," he said, "but she talked to them like she knew them really well." An officer handed Detective Murphy Lauren's phone, which she had abandoned in her rush to escape. "We will trace her recent calls," the detective said. "If she is working with the same people your father owes money to, we can establish conspiracy." "There is more," I said carefully. "My attorney uncovered Lauren's history of targeting elderly clients and families already in crisis." "What kind of history?" Detective Murphy asked. I explained everything Grace had uncovered: the falsified Child Protective Services reports, the suspicious deaths of elderly clients, the repeated insurance payouts. Her expression hardened. "Mr. Callahan, if this information holds up, Lauren is not just exploiting your family. She is a serial predator." "Can you find her?" Mark asked. "She is on foot," Detective Murphy said. "All surrounding jurisdictions have been alerted. Her car is still here, so her options are limited." At that moment, Mark's phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Detective Murphy nodded for him to answer. "Hello?" Mark said. A man's voice came through the speaker, loud enough for all of us to hear. "Mark, where is Lauren? She was supposed to meet us an hour ago." I do not know where she is," Mark replied. "You better find her," the man said, "and you better have our money. December 1st is not a suggestion." "I understand," Mark said quietly. "Do you?" the man replied coldly. "Because if Lauren's plan falls apart, we will make Ethan understand instead." The call ended. Detective Murphy was already speaking into her radio. "Dispatch, escalate this to the task force immediately. We have a credible threat against a minor." Ethan tightened his grip on my hand. "Grandpa," he whispered, "what did that man mean?" I squeezed his hand gently. "He meant some adults are very angry," I said, keeping my voice steady. "But they are not going to hurt you." "How do you know?" Ethan asked quietly. "Because Detective Murphy and I will not let them," I said without hesitation. Detective Murphy crouched down so she was eye level with him. "Ethan, you're going to stay with your grandpa for a while, all right?" she said gently. "We will also have officers checking on you regularly." He nodded, then looked past her. "What about my dad?" She turned toward Mark. "Your father is going to help us catch the people who threatened you." Despite the fog still clinging to him from the drugs, Mark straightened his shoulders. "Tell me what you need," he said. "I will do it." "First," she replied, "you need to be admitted to a medical facility. We need that substance completely out of your system, and we need formal documentation of what Lauren gave you." "And after that?" he asked. "After that," she said, "you help us set a trap." 3 hours later, we were at Presbyterian Hospital. The lab results confirmed what we already suspected. Mark's blood showed significant levels of zolpidem, commonly known as Ambien, combined with diphenhydramine. The dosage was enough to keep him unconscious for 8 to 12 hours. Detective Murphy studied the report. "She was planning something that required him to be fully incapacitated," she said. "Like what?" I asked. "Think it through," she replied. "Mark unconscious. You show up to check on him. Her associates arrive to solve problems quietly. What would investigators find the next morning? The answer hit me like a blow. A staged home invasion, a robbery gone wrong, an elderly father and his adult son dead. Lauren, as the grieving wife and stepmother, collecting insurance payouts and using them to erase Mark's debts. "How close did we come?" I asked. She met my eyes. "If Ethan had not called emergency services when he did, if you had arrived a little later, if Lauren's timing had been slightly better." She let the sentence trail off. She did not need to finish it. At 6 o'clock that morning, my phone rang. Grace Coleman. "Tom, I have been monitoring police communications all night," she said. "Are you all right?" "We are alive," I replied. "I have information about the life insurance," she continued. "Lauren took out a policy on you 3 months ago. $800,000. I felt sick. How could she do that without my consent? "She forged your signature and falsified medical records," Grace said. "She used her medical background to fabricate a health evaluation. The insurer never contacted you directly because she listed Mark as the policy liaison." "And the beneficiary?" I asked. "Originally Mark," she said, "but she filed a beneficiary change last week. Now the payout goes to Mark's estate if he predeceases you. Meaning, if both Mark and I died, Lauren would inherit everything as his widow and Ethan's legal guardian." Ethan had never just been a victim. He had been the key to the entire plan. "Crystal, Lauren, has disappeared," I said, "but her associates directly threatened Ethan." "This is beyond local jurisdiction now," Grace said. "I am contacting federal authorities." "The FBI?" I asked. "Yes," she replied. "Interstate fraud, insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and direct threats against a minor. This is a federal case." I ended the call and looked down at Ethan, who was curled up in a hospital chair beside me. "Grandpa," he murmured sleepily, "is it over?" "Not yet," I said softly, "but we are winning." Even as I said the words, I knew Lauren's desperation would make her more dangerous than ever. The following Tuesday morning, Special Agent Sarah Hendricks from the Federal Bureau of Investigation arrived at the hospital. She was tall, composed, and carried herself like someone used to dismantling complicated fraud schemes. "Mr. Callahan," she said, shaking my hand, "Detective Murphy briefed me fully. We are treating this as a high-priority case." "My only concern is Ethan's safety," I said. "That is our priority as well," she assured me. "Protective surveillance begins immediately. However, we need Lauren to re-establish contact with her associates so we can identify and arrest everyone involved." "How do you plan to do that?" I asked. She glanced toward Mark. "We are going to use your son as bait." Mark, now cleared medically, looked pale but resolute. "What do you need me to do?" Agent Hendricks opened her laptop. "Lauren's associates called you last night demanding a meeting. We want you to return the call and agree to meet them." "And if they hurt me?" he asked. "They will not," she said calmly. "They need you alive until December 1st. You are their only path to repayment." She explained the operation in detail. Mark would wear a wire to capture any admissions regarding threats against Ethan. Federal agents would maintain constant surveillance and immediate backup. The objective was to tie Lauren directly to her associates and document their conspiracy. "What about Lauren herself?" I asked. "We are tracking her through financial activity," Agent Hendricks replied. "She has used credit cards twice since fleeing, both at automated teller machines near Dallas Love Field Airport." "She is trying to run," I said. "Or she is positioning herself," Agent Hendricks corrected. People like her do not flee until they believe the payoff is secured. I felt a chill. You think she is still planning to kill me? Agent Hendricks met my eyes. Yes, she said. I think she is desperate, I said quietly, and desperate people take desperate risks. Grace Coleman arrived not long after, carrying a folder thick with fresh court documents. Tom, I obtained an emergency court order freezing every insurance policy that lists Lauren as a beneficiary, she said. She cannot collect any death benefits even if she succeeds in killing me, I finished. Yes, Grace said grimly, but there is something else you need to know. I found another policy. My chest tightened. On who? On Ethan, she said. $500,000. Lauren is listed as both guardian and beneficiary. The room went silent. Ethan looked up from his coloring book. What is a beneficiary? He asked. It is someone who gets money when something bad happens, Mark answered softly. Ethan frowned. Why would Lauren get money if something bad happened to me? No child should ever have to ask a question like that. Agent Hendricks glanced at her watch. Mark, are you ready to make the call? Right now? He asked. The longer we wait, she said, the more time Lauren has to set something in motion that we cannot control. Mark nodded and dialed the number from the previous night. It rang 3 times before a rough voice answered. Yeah? This is Mark Callahan, he said. You called about Lauren. About time, the man snapped. Where the hell is she? I do not know, Mark replied. She left after my father showed up last night. Your father? The man scoffed. The old guy Lauren has been warning us about? Yes. Listen carefully, the man said. Lauren promised we would have our money by December 1st. She said she had a plan to get it from your father. What kind of plan? Mark asked. That is between her and us, the man replied. But if her plan falls apart, we move to Plan B. What is Plan B? We collect from your kid instead, the man said flatly. Insurance is insurance. Mark's face drained of color, but Agent Hendricks signaled him to keep going. How would you collect money from Ethan? Mark asked. Kids have accidents, the man said, especially kids whose fathers owe money to the wrong people. Lauren explained how these things work. She explained accidents, Mark pressed. Lauren has experience, the man replied. Old people, kids, all kinds of accidents. She is very talented. Agent Hendricks was already recording everything, but she motioned for Mark to push further. When are you meeting Lauren again? He asked. Tonight, the man said. She has a few final arrangements to make. Then we finish this. What arrangements? Ask her, the man replied. But Mark, if you want your kid to see his 12th birthday, you better hope her plan works. The call ended. Agent Hendricks immediately keyed her radio. Control, I need immediate surveillance on all airports, bus terminals, and car rental agencies. Suspect is making final arrangements for an unidentified operation. She turned to me. Mr. Callahan, Lauren is not running. She is planning one last attempt to secure the insurance money. How? I asked. We do not know yet, she said. But her associates just admitted they will kill your grandson if her original plan fails. Ethan looked up again. Grandpa, he asked, are the bad people coming back? Not if I can help it, I said, and I meant it. By then, I had already made up my mind. Lauren needed me isolated, accessible, and vulnerable to make her final move. I was going to give her exactly what she wanted. Agent Hendricks hated the idea. Absolutely not, she said. We are not using a 72-year-old civilian as bait. I am not civilian bait, I replied. I am Ethan's grandfather, and those people just threatened to kill him. We were back in Grace Coleman's conference room, arguing strategy while Ethan slept in the adjoining office. Tom, Grace said carefully, what you are proposing is extraordinarily dangerous. What Lauren is planning is even worse, I replied. At least this way, we control the situation. My plan was straightforward. I would return to my house alone, make myself an obvious target, and wait. Federal surveillance teams would monitor everything. I would be wired. If Lauren approached me, every word would be recorded before she made her move. Mr. Callahan, Agent Hendricks said firmly, professional killers do not explain their plans to their victims. Lauren is not a professional killer, I said. She is a manipulator who has gotten away with murder because her victims were isolated and powerless. She has never dealt with someone who knows exactly what she is doing. Mark spoke up. Dad is right. Lauren needs to believe she is winning. She cannot resist explaining how smart she is. Agent Hendricks looked at him. How do you know that? Because that is what she did to me for 3 years, he said. She always needed me to understand how clever she was. Agent Hendricks remained uneasy, but her options were narrowing. Lauren had gone dark digitally, and her associates had stopped responding after the morning call. Finally, she nodded once. If we do this, you wear a wire, you remain in constant contact, and you follow our instructions exactly. Agreed, I said. And if anything feels wrong, she added, anything at all, you abort immediately. I met her gaze. Agent Hendricks, everything about this already feels wrong, but it is the only way to end it. That evening, I returned alone to my house on Maple Drive. Federal surveillance teams quietly positioned themselves throughout the neighborhood, blending in as parked cars and darkened silhouettes, while Mark and Ethan stayed under protection at Grace Coleman's office. Everything was in place. I followed my normal routine as if nothing were wrong. I made a simple dinner, watched the evening news, and prepared for bed. But I left the front door unlocked. I kept the lights on. I made sure anyone outside could clearly see me moving through the house. I wanted her to know I was home. I wanted her to think I was vulnerable. At exactly 9:47 that night, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, Lauren stood there. Her hair was slightly disheveled, her breathing shallow. The polished professional mask she usually wore was gone, replaced by something frantic and dangerous. Tom, she said, forcing calm into her voice, we need to talk. Of course, I replied evenly. Come in. She stepped inside cautiously, her eyes scanning the rooms, confirming that I was alone. Tom, last night was a misunderstanding, she said. I panicked when you came over making accusations. What accusations? I asked. Stealing money, hurting Ethan, she said quickly. Tom, I would never hurt that child. Lauren, I said quietly, Ethan had bruises. Children bruise easily, she replied without hesitation, and you have to understand, he has been acting out because he is confused about family dynamics. Confused in what way? I asked. She sat across from me in the living room and slipped into her therapist tone, calm and reassuring. Tom, Mark and I have been very concerned about your recent behavior, she said. The memory problems, the paranoia around finances, the way you have been undermining our parenting. Such as? I asked. Taking Ethan without permission, she said. filling his head with ideas about abuse. These are classic signs of cognitive decline. Even now, with everything unraveling, she was building her story. "Lauren," I said, "I know about the insurance policies." She blinked. "What insurance policies?" "The $800,000 policy on my life," I said, "and the $500,000 policy on Ethan." She shook her head slowly. "Tom, I have no idea what you are talking about." "I know about your time in Austin," I continued, "the falsified Child Protective Services reports." "Tom," she said gently, "you are experiencing paranoid delusions." "I know about the elderly clients in Houston." She leaned forward. "Tom, please let me help you." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small prescription bottle. "What is that?" I asked. "Your blood pressure medication," she said. "You forgot to take it tonight. At your age, that can cause confusion, agitation, even hallucinations." She was right about one thing. I had not taken my evening dose, but these were not my pills. "Lauren," I said calmly, "those are not my medication." "Yes, they are," she insisted. "Your name is on the label." I took the bottle and examined it. My name, my doctor, my prescription number. But the pills inside were wrong. "Tom," she said firmly, "you need to take 3 of these right now. Your blood pressure is dangerously high." "How do you know my blood pressure is high?" I asked. "I can see it," she said. "The flushed skin, the agitation. If you do not take your medication, you could have a stroke." "And if I take it?" I asked. "You will feel calm," she replied. "Relaxed. You will sleep peacefully." "And then what happens?" I asked. "Tomorrow," she said, "Mark and I will help you transition into the medical care you clearly need." "What kind of care?" I asked. "Full-time professional care," she said smoothly. "Somewhere safe, where you cannot hurt yourself or make reckless decisions." "Like freezing my bank accounts?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "You cannot be trusted with financial decisions anymore." "And Ethan?" I asked. She smiled thinly. "Ethan will be just fine. Mark and I will take excellent care of him." "With the insurance money?" I asked. Her composure finally broke. "What insurance money?" she snapped. "The money you collect when Ethan has his accident," I said. "Tom, you're not making sense," she said sharply. "Your associates explained it to Mark this morning," I replied. "Insurance is insurance." She went completely still. "What associates?" she asked. "The men Mark owes money to," I said. "The ones you introduced him to. The ones who are coming here tonight to make sure your plan succeeds." "No one is coming here tonight," she said quickly. "Then why do you keep checking your phone?" I asked. Her eyes flicked down instinctively. "Tom," she said, her voice tightening, "you need to take your medication now." "Why?" I asked. "Because if you do not," she said coldly, "things will become very unpleasant for Ethan." "How unpleasant?" I asked. "Children have accidents," she said flatly, "especially children whose grandfathers refuse reasonable treatment plans." There it was, the threat. "Lauren," I said, "are you threatening to hurt my grandson?" "I am explaining reality," she replied. "Take the pills." "And if I refuse?" I asked. "Then my friends will convince you," she said. "They should be here any minute." "Your friends?" I asked. "People who understand that elderly patients sometimes resist proper care," she said. "People who know how to help stubborn patients make better choices." "By hurting Ethan?" I asked. "By doing whatever is necessary," she said. "Lauren," I said quietly, "Ethan is not here." Her face drained of color. "What do you mean he is not here?" "He is safe," I said. with his father and under Federal Bureau of Investigation protection." Her mouth opened, then closed. "Federal Bureau of Investigation?" she whispered. "Yes," I said, "and Agent Hendricks will be very interested in your admission that you threatened my grandson." Her eyes dropped to my chest. "You are wearing a wire," she said. "Yes," I replied. In one swift motion, she pulled a handgun from her purse and aimed it at me. "Turn it off," she said. "I cannot," I answered calmly. "Tom," Lauren said through clenched teeth, the gun steady in her hand, "turn off the recording device right now, or I will kill you." "Lauren," I replied evenly, "killing me is not going to fix what you have done." "The Federal Bureau of Investigation already knows about the insurance policies," she snapped. "They know about the offshore accounts. They know everything." "Then you have nothing left to protect," I said. Her eyes hardened. She knew it was true, and that realization made her more dangerous than ever. "Lauren," I continued, "what exactly did you tell your associates about tonight?" "I told them you would be cooperative," she said. "And if I am not?" I asked. "Then they will make Ethan cooperate instead." "Ethan is under federal protection," I said. She laughed bitterly. "You do not understand who these people are or what they are capable of." Car doors slammed outside. Through the wire, I heard Agent Hendricks' voice crackle into my ear. "Tom, we have visual confirmation. 2 armed males approaching your house. We are moving in." Lauren heard it too. She jammed the barrel of the gun against my temple. "Turn it off, now." "I cannot," I said. "Then we do this the hard way?" The front door opened without a knock. 2 men stepped inside. Both were large, confident, armed. They moved like people who had dealt with difficult collections before. One wore a faded Texas Ranger's cap. "Lauren," the bigger one said, scanning the room, "what is going on?" "He is wired," she said. "Federal surveillance?" The man in the cap moved to the window and peeked through the blinds. "How many agents?" "I do not know," she replied, "but they know everything." "Then we accelerate," he said. He turned toward me. "Mr. Callahan, you are going to call your grandson." "I cannot," I said. "Ethan is not accessible to me." "Make him accessible," he replied flatly. "I will not." He nodded to his partner, who immediately pulled out a phone. "Then we call Child Protective Services," the man said. "We report a domestic violence incident involving an elderly man with dementia who became aggressive toward his caregiver." "They will not release Ethan to you," I said. "They will release him to Lauren," he replied calmly. "She is family. She has medical training, and she will provide documentation that you are experiencing a psychiatric emergency." Lauren was already pulling papers from her purse. "I have commitment forms," she said. "Medical evaluations showing cognitive decline. Witness statements describing his recent paranoid behavior." "Witness statements from whom?" I asked. "Nathan," she said confidently. "He will confirm everything." "Nathan will not lie for you," I said. "Nathan will do exactly what I tell him to do," she replied. "He owes us $280,000, and involving federal agents only made that worse." Agent Hendricks' voice returned through the wire. "Tom, keep them talking. We are in position." Lauren reached forward and ripped the earpiece from my ear. "Enough!" she snapped. The man in the cap took control. "Here's how this ends," he said. "You suffer a medical emergency, heart attack, stroke, something that requires immediate hospitalization." "And then?" I asked. "Lauren calls emergency services," he continued. "Reports that you were confused and aggressive before you collapsed." And after that? I pressed. Lauren becomes Ethan's legal guardian, he said. Nathan deals with his debts. Clean, efficient. Except for Ethan, I said. He will be fine, the man replied. Kids bounce back. Lauren pulled a syringe from her purse. This will mimic cardiac arrest symptoms, she said calmly. You will be unconscious, but alive. When you wake up, you will be under psychiatric evaluation. For how long? I asked. As long as it takes for the insurance to pay, she said. Insurance does not pay out for psychiatric patients, I replied. It does when the patient dies from complications of psychiatric treatment, she said coldly. She was planning to kill me in a hospital bed and make it look like a tragic medical decline. What about Nathan? I asked. Nathan will be devastated, she said. People sometimes do not survive that level of grief. You are planning to kill both of us, I said. I am planning to solve multiple problems efficiently, she replied. The man in the cap checked his watch. We need to move, he said. Every minute here increases risk. Lauren raised the syringe. Tom, she said, this is not personal. You seem like a decent grandfather, but you have assets my people need, and elderly men often struggle to understand complex financial realities. Lauren, I said quietly. Wait. She hesitated. For what? I want to show you something. Slowly, deliberately, I reached into my shirt pocket and pulled out a small device. She frowned. What is that? Ethan's emergency phone, I said. The one I gave him months ago. So? She demanded. It has been recording everything, I said, from the moment you walked in tonight. The color drained from her face. That is impossible, Lauren said, her voice hollow. It is not, I replied. Ethan has been recording your abuse for months with that device. Tonight, he activated it remotely when the Federal Bureau of Investigation told him you were inside my house. I pressed a button on the phone, and Ethan's voice filled the room through the speaker. Grandpa, I can hear everything. I looked straight at her. And so can the agents. Lauren, you are not going to hurt anyone ever again. The man in the ranger's cap turned toward the windows just as they shattered inward. Agents flooded the room in seconds. Ethan had given us exactly what we needed to end it. 6 months later, Ethan and I sat side by side in the courthouse cafeteria, splitting vending machine cookies while Mark testified against Lauren's associates down the hall. Grandpa, Ethan asked quietly, do you think Lauren feels sorry? I shook my head. I think she is sorry she got caught. Lauren ultimately pleaded guilty to conspiracy, fraud, and attempted murder. In exchange, she received a 25-year sentence. Her associates were convicted on racketeering charges and for making credible threats against a minor. Each of them received lengthy prison terms. Mark was sentenced to probation and mandatory addiction treatment. What about Dad? Ethan asked. Your dad is doing the hardest work there is, I said, becoming the father you deserve. Mark stepped out of the courtroom a few minutes later. He looked worn down, but lighter somehow. He had been sober for 6 months and was rebuilding his relationship with Ethan through supervised visits, one step at a time. How did it go? I asked. The prosecutor says Lauren's conviction should stand, he said. Her recorded admissions were airtight. And the gambling debt? Paid, he replied. Recovered from the money she stole from you plus interest. Good, I said. Ethan looked up from his homework. Dad, are you coming to my baseball game on Saturday? Mark hesitated and glanced at me. If your grandpa says it is okay. It is okay, I said, but Ethan has conditions. Ethan had learned how to advocate for his own safety. "What are the conditions?" Mark asked gently. "You have to promise to believe me when I tell you something important," Ethan said. "I promise," Mark replied without hesitation. "And you have to promise not to make decisions about me without talking to me first." "I promise that too." "And you have to keep going to counseling even when it feels hard." Mark swallowed. "Ethan, I promise all of that." They hugged, awkward at first, then real. Mark was finally learning how to be a father instead of someone else's pawn. "Grandpa," Ethan asked later, "what happens now?" "Now," I said, "we build the family we should have been all along." I restructured my estate to protect Ethan's future while supporting Mark's recovery. The Callahan Construction Company established a foundation for abused children, and Ethan somehow became its youngest and most passionate advocate. "Ethan," I said one afternoon, "do you remember what I told you about chess?" He smiled. "Sometimes the smallest piece saves the king." "That is right," I said. "You saved all of us." He shook his head and squeezed my hand. "You saved me first, Grandpa." "We saved each other," I said. Outside the courthouse, Dallas traffic rolled by like it always had. Families rushed to practices and dinners, most of them unaware how fragile trust can be, how easily love can be twisted by the wrong person. Some of us learned the hard way that family is not about bloodlines or paperwork. It is about showing up when someone asks for help, even if that call comes late at night. Ethan took my hand as we walked toward the car. "Grandpa," he said, "can we go home now?" "Yes, son," I replied, "we can go home." And if this story stays with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Children's voices matter. Older adults deserve protection, and sometimes the smallest person in the room carries the greatest courage. If a child reaches out for help, believe them first. The questions can wait.